Hey everyone. Hey Tristan.
Hey, how are you?
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm gonna mute the So here we are. Happy Wednesday morning, afternoon, everyone. Today we wanted to put this event together to um, share a little bit about what we're doing, dive into one particular function and use case that we're seeing Prompt Loop power, and then round it off by just talking a little bit about marketing in general, how things are changing, how teams are adopting new tools, thinking about new tools. Tristan is a pro. Obviously, has been doing this long before AI entered the scene, but he has a great perspective on what he's seeing from clients, what folks are focusing on, asking about. I mean, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of learning, so we're hoping to round this off by hitting some questions and comments that we've gotten, that we're getting live, etc. So I'll start off with a quick introduction. My name's Peter. I'm the founder of Prompt Loop. Prompt Loop's a tool that lets anyone use AI models to power their spreadsheets, and we'll get into a little bit about how that's particularly interesting to marketing. And I'll hand it over to Tristan.
Yeah, Tristan Rummel. I've done a little bit of everything with a bunch of different small businesses, medium-sized businesses when it comes to like business and marketing, sales. But I basically had a process I was using for years, helping my clients out with content, and I basically come up with a methodology. I was using spreadsheets to figure it out and put it together and turn around and fulfill for clients. And when I saw what Peter had built with Prompt Loop, that's when we got connected and seeing like, oh, I could actually turn this around and like help power stuff that I was already doing internally, certain processes and systems. And then from there, it's really opened up a lot of opportunities with clients as well too, realizing like the capabilities are possible with it.
Yeah, we got in touch early on. Prompt Loop we've been kind of working and building models that are easy to bring into this interface since kind of midway through last year. So in that time frame, got in touch with Tristan. He was getting questions from clients about what the best levers to pull are, really to stay ahead, to make sure folks are adopting what's out there, in just an effort at the end of the day to communicate better to their customers. So all of this, and we're going to get into this, is not ways for you to put some sort of machine or model in between you and your customers. It's really just to put yourself in the driver's seat in more conversations. And Tristan can say that better than I can, but I mean, that's what he came with interest in and has been helpful in crafting some of what we're enabling on the tech side, just making it easy for folks like Tristan, like yourself, like folks on the call to take these tools and build them. I like to think of the analogy of using AI models, whether it's writing or analysis, is a lot more like photography than TV. So we all know there's Chat GPT, there's tools where you can go and ask for something and get a response that's going to look a lot like what anyone else is getting. But the focus, especially of the teams that are really leaning in and making this work for them, is a little bit more for like photography, where like you have your iPhone and you want to take that picture that you want in a certain way, even if it's not the professional TV camera at the football game. So we like to lean into that and give you the keys to customizing something that's going to work for you and your team. We're looking at marketing today. This applies really across the board. If you deal with any sort of information in a repeatable way, obviously there's probably spreadsheets already involved there, but they offer a way to craft and build something that is repeatable, is something you can take and share with your team, and then is something that, as the models improve, basically our job is just to get the latest and greatest to everyone in a way that's easy to use, that you can take and keep working for you without having to learn new software every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would love to maybe dig in a little bit, Tristan, and talk and hear more about what your process was like leading into this, and like how you maybe first started to hear about tools. I know folks have heard of Jasper, Copy AI, etc., Open AI, and then like what sort of questions you started to get from clients that got you thinking about this earlier than most.
Yeah. So this was, I would say, I've always been doing a little bit of work with content stuff, content and copy. And I got pulled into right at the beginning of COVID. I had a lot of clients start reaching out saying like, we need help with LinkedIn. Specifically, we're selling B2B. Uh, I was like, well, content helps out with that type of stuff. I had a client that had been doing it manually and getting good results. And I worked with him and trained him, and he was just natural at it. So then they came to me and they needed the same type of results. They were desperate for business. Everyone was in a hard time. So they kept trying to come up with it. I'm like, I can't. First of all, I don't have time to write for all you. And the second, on the flip side, I have to turn around and train someone else to write for all of you, which is also its own challenges. Or I could try to teach you how to think through this process. And what I kept realizing, I'm like, well, how I write and how I think about it, there's a specific process and methodology. I kept trying to make it simpler and simpler for clients because they were running into issues of, okay, I'm just looking at a blank screen. What do I say? What do I write about? They'd also turned around. It's like, well, they have the ideas for the content, but there's no structure for it. So I just like sat there. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a lot of caffeine. I was up late one night. I'm like, I got to figure this out because there's a volume here. There's a need for it. I'm like, how do I systematize what's going on in my brain and make it easier for people? I'm like, create a structure that's repeatable. So I could turn around, and I've had demands for clients. I can get it done on time. So what I did is I sat down and played around with a Google sheet, and I create all these different inputs, and I could create basically like infinite variations based on what the client inputs were, based on pain points, the market they're going after, what they want to be known for as a brand, things like that, like a one-page document. If you take that, plug it in, and basically create all these variations, and at least an outline or framework for what that piece of content would look like. And also, I tell people it created bumpers on the content, right? Because a lot of times people are going out and creating content. It's all over the place. You even see that with the ChatGPT examples. They don't know what to feed it. They're copying and pasting. It's kind of a little bit all over. Sometimes you see that with some of the other outputs from other tools. Like, I'm not quite sure this is what it's looking for. It's a little generic. It's like, I want this to sound like the client. This needs to sound like them. This needs to be about their business, their client base, their pain points, how they approach the problem uniquely and differently. And I need to pull that out. So we did. I started having that process. It was good. I could use it with clients, but I'm like, I ran out of time. It's like, well, I don't really feel like building a whole business of just doing content fulfillment and things like that. There's plenty of businesses like that exist. So I just kind of kept it there. During that process, though, this is probably sometime in 2020. I'm like, there's got to be a faster way to do this. I'd seen Jasper come out. I'm like, well, how do I get access to this stuff? I had it on my radar, but I was waiting for some chance for me to kind of get more of my hands on it. So it's kind of like a side project I just used over the years. And then when everything started kicking off, I was the last year, started having more clients asking about it again, started getting pulled more into that work, and started having sales teams that were interested in it because, again, they want to drive inbound business. Then ChatGPT comes out and everyone's starting to ask about that, how they use it. And I'm like, well, I bet I could plug this into my spreadsheet, but how do I actually create this integration? So I'd been trying to manipulate it and create these like different back and forths. It just wasn't what I was looking for until I came across Prompt Loop. I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is what I'm looking for. Because a lot of the stuff I had seen was very like static. I couldn't train it to do what it needed to do. It was like the same input and it kind of looked the same after a while. Or it was just like me talking to ChatGPT in a Google Sheet, which is fine. But I had a process and methodology I needed this thing to work through. Right. So it allowed me to, I mentioned to Peter before, it's like I had like Lego bricks now. I could turn around. I could use this to build into my own framework what needed to happen for clients. And so I was able to do that. And then, I've been able to turn around, start helping out clients, like I have more coming in for it. You start working with entire sales teams. And what you start having is either myself or clients themselves. They can create the same amount of output that's super customized, built around someone's voice, style of writing, all that, their own personal interest, like a personalized Jasper, and do it at scale with less effort than ever before. So it's just being a really powerful tool that got kind of baked into stuff. And actually, since then, showing some clients, they've also like pointed them towards Peter's direction too, like right before this, because it's the same thing. You start realizing I have these repeatable patterns in marketing, in sales, in content, but also other parts of the business. You're like, well, okay, there's a structure that's occurring. How can I make this simpler? How can I be enabled by this technology versus it's competing against me all the time?
Yeah, no, super well said. I mean, I think I heard a few things like on the friction side, lack of time, like how do I scale this up? Like how do I really understand what all these businesses are trying to communicate? And you can do that well, right, with a conversation like we're sitting down here today. And we've obviously done these before, just understanding what are the types of things Tristan's saying about his customers? Like, how is he talking to them already? Who are they? All of that is something that, like, if you're running and growing your own business, for your partners, hopefully in most cases, and that's what you want to build really any capability around. You can almost peel away if we weren't talking about models or AI or anything today. It's just like, how am I going to help someone communicate what they're providing and what the value is in a clear way. And that starts from a point of customization and specificity. So I think in a second we'll jump over and just um, look at Tristan's process. So this is just an example sheet that's like a high level view of one way to take a set of questions that are really easy, probably for anyone um, who's familiar with this to fill out as themselves, and then we'll talk about how that can be tied in later to prompt loop to get you to somewhere where you're getting the things like we said, something that's customizable that you can tweak. It's not a black box, but it abstracts away the complexity of like, how am I going to wire up particular models that it's important to understand, and we'll get into some of the tech at the end, but isn't something that you need as much as you need to know your customers.
Mm-hmm.
So let me add a screen here.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, we're on here. 1 second. There we go. Perfect. So before we get here, I'll do my layman's overview here, and then I'll let Tristan jump in as to like methodology behind these questions. But what we're looking at obviously is a Google sheet, but more importantly, the contents is a set of questions that help someone like Tristan or you for your own business get a sense of what are the important aspects of your business, your value that you want to communicate to your customers. So these are the building blocks for eventual content, be that LinkedIn, YouTube, interviews, marketing material on your website, what your brand is known for, the first question. So kind of three big ideas about if someone sees a sign on a street or you meet someone at a cocktail party, like what are you talking about? What is the value, the problem you're solving? Your ideal client core needs is another one, and working down into like different specific pieces you could bring into any customer communication. So folks who have content calendars and methodologies around this already, this likely looks familiar, but this is a really good succinct way where anyone can pick up this sheet and basically start to fill it out for themselves, and then have building blocks to move forward. So Tristan, I don't know, as I scroll through here, if you have anything to layer on to like these particular questions and why they've worked well for clients.
Yeah. The reason is sometimes you have a lot of stuff that comes out around content, and sometimes you get just a couple issues that'll happen. One, it sounds really generic in the sense that anyone could have written it. There's nothing really interesting or exciting about it. But then on the flip side too, is like in order to do that, sometimes people think you just got to start combining different elements of like personalization. What does that mean? Sometimes that means there's like sales teams, and there's a sales guy that sells really well in person. Was like, how do we bring that online and what he's really capable and strong at? It's like how he's talking about his market. It's because there's certain things about his personality. Maybe he coaches Little League Baseball, but you notice when you interact with that individual, that comes up over and over again. It's a big part of their selling process itself. So if I can start baking that into the content and saying like, hey, this actually sounds like the person I'd be buying from. So I'm going to be buying from a person at the end of the day. How do I create content that does that? Next is like just failing basic copywriting methodology, which is going to be, what are the actual pain points? What are the mistakes they're missing out on? What are the results they could have? And what are triggers, I call them, like symptoms they're experiencing because they haven't solved this pain point. And I know if I hit on these topics, what a client really needs to know or experience, what are the questions they're asking? If I'm creating content that works through this framework, I'm going to be consistently selling my product without having to really try on selling it. I'm going to be hitting on the pain points and the reasons that someone buys from me offline or in person, that they would apply with my content as well too. So that's like really what the structure works. And then it's like, then that we just create like, and the other one that does really well is like an enemy you're going to attack, or like a myth you can bust for people. And that's, again, too, people just love hearing a different perspective, different point of view. So you can have all the personalized content in the world, but if it doesn't take a strong position or doesn't stand out, it's so easy to get lost in the noise. So again, too, it's like this taking a really manual process. It's really built around people. I transcribe the calls with clients. I figure these things out. I'm just using the prompt loop to help them get over that I'm just staring at a blank screen type of thing, right? But it's all stuff that the person themselves already have, or just like, how do we enable it with a structured format to like produce types of content that can be repurposed multiple ways.
That's awesome. Yeah. And things I remember, like even in our first call, is that part of the trick here. I mean, you mentioned your calls. So like the spoken interview at the start of this, again, like that's things like that is what takes really good client understanding to the next level. But also if you meet someone, like you meet a brother-in-law or something at a party, and you're explaining what you're doing, you're probably using stories and talking about like the myths of your business that you get excited about. I mean, it's easy to see when someone knows a lot about what they're doing and cares about it. And those are the same things that make customers, give customers some certainty that what you're bringing to them is of value, especially when it's a partnership or services business. But a lot of times when we go to, say, produce something on LinkedIn, make a video, a blog post, there's kind of this sometimes editor on our shoulder that makes us want to peel away some of that personalization to fit in or to sound like other things we've read. Whereas I don't need to remind anyone here that like the real value is getting to those stories about Little League baseball and things that you would say in person to someone if you had them on the phone or have them face to face when you're talking about what your company's offering. So this transcript or information drop is things that maybe came out of a call or an interview that give you information to pull in to tell the model, like, these are the snippets we definitely want to include. And we'll show a little bit about how that happens. So again, like we haven't even talked about the AI models yet, because most of the value here is about taking your existing process, thinking about what's working well, and putting the model only at the step where it can be most helpful, which in this case is like getting over the blank screen, hooking it up to all this information we have.
Yeah. And it's a funny little like addendum on like we were just talking about, is that all this had to get figured out because I was working with insurance people, right? So as a bunch of insurance people, you're selling what a lot of people perceive as a commodity product. There's anyone that's selling it. And you realize, well, there's also really good salespeople in there, and they can sell the pants off anyone in person. For whatever reason, they can always sell some kind of commodity product. And what sells us, their personality, how they talk about it. But once these people that were selling commodity products and things like that were on the internet, just like Peter's point, they just removed all their entire personality. They didn't know how to reframe it. They sound like everyone else. Like, you don't want to sound like Geico when you're selling these types of policies. So those guys got a trial by fire period. I'm like, how do we get this out of them? Right. And then the problem we ran into is like, you're an insurance sales guy. You never want to write content. It's like not really what you're good at. It's not what you're interested in. So, but Peter, like Prompt Loop came out. It was like, this is like a game changer for these guys. Be able to go in there, be themselves, bring their personalities to their content as well as offline.
Exactly. And this is where, like, again, this sheet existed obviously when we sat down for the first time and crafted this. And the real takeaway here is you should be thinking about these tools not as stripping away what you already have going, but lean into what you already have going, lean into your processes, what's working for your clients, or your team itself, and move from there. So one of the nice things, and like one of the reasons we are building in Excel and Google Sheets, is it is an easy way to take something like a list of facets about your business and structure them into something that can package and give us an output of what we want to write about. So to boil it down as simply as possible, Prompt Loop works with AI models like you'll find in ChatGPT and otherwise, that focus on taking a specific set of examples, so example writing pieces from your own company, your clients, basically the intended author, and then deconstructing them a little bit. So what we have here are several pieces of writing from this example customer. And then we went and backfilled in like, what are the key branding topics, type of post, the day-to-day symptom they're talking about for each piece. So I think we have 4 or 5 in here. What works best will vary for you, but again, this template will be shared, or a version of it after this stream. But this is the kind of ammo that the model's taking into its writing activity, its generation activity. At the top, these inputs are connected to the dropdown that we'll see in the next slide, but you can just think of this as like, this is basically what we want to write about next. And then these are the examples the model can work with.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a lot of boxes, but like the simplified thing to think about is we have a huge list of topics we could conceivably write about. We're giving the model 3 or 4 gold standard examples of really performant content that's worked already, deconstructing that a little bit so the model has the understanding of what's the relationship between our inputs, as you see in the drop down here, and the outputs of like gold standard content. Once it has those two, it can come up with a accurate draft that's very targeted at what you want to write about. So to make this easy for the end user, where you basically only have to touch these buttons, we've set this up, and Tristan set this up so that he has this linked to that first sheet we looked at, like what are the client core needs, what are they looking for answers to. So he can just go in, maybe you have a schedule in mind where you want to get a post or piece on the website every few days. You can go in and select a particular thing you want to highlight or talk about. Obviously, you could pair this with an offering or a post or video you have, and then craft it like you would do sitting down with a professional writer to get you started on a draft. I want to talk about an insight. I want to talk about that the client's looking for wanting a transparent partner that tells them kind of where things are coming from. I think this example is a retail manufacturing company that the problem or mistake. So myth busting is always something that we'll naturally gravitate to when we're in person, but we wanted to, as we said, pull that into the writing here. You'll see the problem or mistake to maybe bust is not buying just based on the numbers, like what makes your company special. And then day-to-day symptoms and result on what they're missing out, etc. So what we have now here is a way to select in the dropdown, and every time we change any of these examples, we're going to be able to generate a draft. So you see, this is custom voice 2. In more kind of advanced uses, folks will have maybe 1, 2, or 3 different set of examples, which is going to tell the model, instead of I want this medium form, what might be a LinkedIn post, I want something that's tweet length, or I want something that's a header for like H2 on our blog. Or maybe something that's like a little bit more Gen Z focused. So if you have a TikTok or another digital presence that you're working towards, you can add in that custom voice, and then it's always going to be there anytime you select any of these drop downs in this example. You could format, it's a spreadsheet. You could format this really any way you want. Again, all all it's doing here. We have a couple checkers to make sure basically our form is filled out. And then Prompt Loop is first selecting on that sheet we looked at this set of examples. So it's highlighting the inputs are these two rows here, and the outputs are these two long form pieces of content on the right. And then for its target, it's like, what do we want now? It's this set of inputs. So kind of left, right, top of inputs, outputs, and targets. So if you were ignore the model for a second. If Tristan is hiring me to help him out with some of this copy, he's going to say, hey, here's some of the themes I want customers to write about. Here's what they've written in the past. Use this to come up with a draft for these ideas. And that's exactly what the model's doing. It's set up to basically be an intuitive match and inference on how you would explain it to someone on your team. And that's intentional, right? So the models work very differently than we think, but if we set it up this way, we can kind of connect the dots on how do I get the output that I want. So you'll see in this generation, which there's effectively nearly infinite ways we could do this because we have 5 or 6 options on each dropdown. We have content speaking to the myth that retailers might face, the importance of like not just thinking about the numbers, like the structure that matches what's gold standard and what we already have, and everything teed up correctly. So I mean, I love this format because it gives you a pretty clear idea of what you can do. And then it's all basically on autopilot where we can go in here and select anything that we want to write about. But before I kind of go forward, and we can do some Q&A too, but Tristan, do you have anything to add on this?
No, I mean, that was a great explanation, but it is fantastic to be able to just have something in there. You can turn around and spit out, you can get a month's worth of content done in 10 minutes type of thing, right? You can have everything laid out. You just need to hop in. Again, too, it has to go back to the human side too for just some of the editing to take a look at, reframe it this way. I want to make it sound a little more casual. But the best part is you just turn around and whatever that new output is that you just edited and created, saying like, hey, this was okay, this is better. You just go teach the model, like, this is what I want in the future as this type of output. So it gets smarter as you go. So it's really powerful in that sense too. Just be able to like work with the tool and your processes and kind of bring in this really interesting like symbiotic relationship to create like really great outputs for clients.
Exactly. And it's taking, I don't know, 10 to 15 seconds to rewrite. So I only changed one input, but obviously it incorporates that into everything that's going into the new output. So I think that the change I made was talking about inventory, which this business would be talking to clients about a lot when they're thinking about a partner for manufacturing, getting things in time, etc.
Yeah.
So back to jump back out of sheets, that is a good way to just think about the main theme here, which is an AI model can be like a one-click. I think of it as like a TV solution, but where it can be most powerful is go to what you already know, go to where the information you already have, what you're doing well. In Tristan's case, it's a really detailed interview process with his clients that pulls out the things that are already working for them, maybe in the offline world, and how do we turn that into online repeatable content, and then take the highest friction point, which in a lot of cases is getting that draft off the ground so that we can jump into that sheet with our month's worth of content, basically pick maybe the top 5 that are most interesting to us. And then it's a matter of editing, not drafting from scratch, to turn that into really A+ copy, just like you maybe would with a partner or contractor already.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic way. You also just do a lot more if someone's like a service provider, they can turn around and actually do a lot more volume. You had mentioned someone else that was doing something similar in like email, right? It's like everyone can kind of move into a role where they're editing and taking care of maybe the stuff that's a little bit simpler.
Yep. Yeah, totally. And it's using it. So like if the writing stage wasn't a block and you want to do more analysis, maybe you have tons of notes from these interviews.
Hmm.
You can easily use Prompt Loop to basically extract and pull out details from blocks of text
Yeah.
in a much more methodical way. So yeah, the goal is building blocks. It's like letting you use the tools where they're most useful. And we got a lot of questions about like what is there like thoughts, dangers, kind of some people are angry about like AI having any role in this process. And I think sometimes that comes from a point of misunderstanding. There might be a world in 3 to 5 years where the models are end to end communicating with humans where there's no input. But um, right now, and honestly, I think for the foreseeable future, if you have an understanding of what you're doing, what you're offering, you're going to kind of remain in the driver's seat as long as you embrace new tools and understand a little bit better how they can play a role. So we've had a couple questions. I think folks obviously are interested in taking a look at the sheet and the framework. Some of this is Tristan's internal method of doing things. Um, we can share a sheet that is a good starting point to understand how Prompt Loop can be helpful, and then we'll link and follow up with folks on uh, on Copy Fuel and how it can be helpful, or folks can get in touch.
Yeah.
And then I know I've had questions too, some in the chat, some on LinkedIn about kind of some of the new models that are coming out, and basically everyone wants to understand how they can keep up with what seems to be coming out week to week. I mean, yesterday we're out here in San Francisco, and there was, I think, everyone seemed to launch their product on the same day. So OpenAI did a pretty well attended demo of their new GPT-4. Google came out with a suite of new tools. They're even going to be bringing some of their own models into tools like Docs and Sheets, which are going to be really helpful. Like basically, Prompt Loop is our focus is not on kind of bringing the model into the sheet itself. It's like crafting the functions to work really well with the information you already have. So a little bit more tailored, and we're looking forward to seeing what comes in, because like our job is, again, take the latest and greatest, package it in a way that it can be handed off to a team like Tristan or everyone else on the call, so that you can take it and use it, and craft it how you want to, not a one-off solution. So, I mean, GPT-4 in general, I think is pretty interesting. We haven't seen a ton of out in the wild use yet, but basically, OpenAI is going to be releasing a bigger multimodal model right now, geared at chat. So things like having the model process a big block of information, maybe not quite as geared towards structural output where you want to produce a month's worth of tailored content. But all of this and all the breakthroughs add to our ability to take your information and customize and build out more specific models for more folks. So we do have the ability beyond what we looked at today to do an even deeper dive and um, take maybe 50 or 100 pieces of content and turn it into a specific model for you. So the range of what we can offer depends on like where obviously we can have the most value. So yeah, the very exciting time. There's a lot coming out. I think the important thing is maybe not to worry as much about waiting for the next greatest thing, but to just use what you already have today. In many ways, we're seeing a tremendous amount of value unlocked in time saving, even on like the labeling and data analysis side with Prompt Loop, on models and technology that have been around for a couple of years now, but putting them in the right point in the business is the big unlock. So continue to, like, you'll see, I mean, our models we're improving every week, every
Mhm.
day. So you'll see that hopefully be reflected in what you're getting. from Prompt Loop, and always trying to test out and cycle in the latest and greatest. But this, yeah, have enjoyed this overview. I think all of these are helpful to take one specific pro, if you will, and dive into like how he's used it already with customers. You can find out more about Prompt Loop, obviously, with links on the page and below. And then Tristan, I think, is going to share his information too. But any thoughts to close it out on what we've gone over, or things that are on top of mind for you, maybe looking to the next 3 months?
Yeah, no, it's I'd say like maybe like obviously like the announcement yesterday, everyone's pretty excited. But everyone's kind of like relying on all these different variations. But for me, it's been exciting, like knowing like Prompt Loop's there. It's building out the models. So I just get to build on top of it too already. Like I don't need to know every single detail. I can play around with it. But I know that that's being taken care of. So that's been useful too. And I've also found, again, just everyone's using spreadsheets somewhere in their business, taking that moment to really figure out like, hey, what are the functions in the business that could be streamlined, simplified, more effective with people's time, and just realizing, hey, I could use this and integrate it as part of the function. It doesn't mean it's replacing anyone. It's not you're not going to sit around on a beach all day. But what it is doing is fulfilling like important tasks and like freeing up your time and other people's time, resources for other challenges for clients and things like that. So it's been super cool. I'm excited to keep building on this. Obviously, the new stuff keeps coming out. I'm always like, well, I wonder. I got to sit back with clients and figure out what's the next step, what's the next evolution. Because like anything, it's going to start. There's going to be so much content that just starts popping up, right? So then, like, what's that next step? What does that need to look like for clients to stand out? So just realizing we're all evolving with this at the same time. And again, too, like a lot of people are playing around with ChatGPT and just using it for silly things, having discussions, stuff like that, or maybe really bad LinkedIn posts. Well, you could just take a step back and realize like I can get actually pretty involved with this thing.
Yeah.
And instead of me sitting on the sidelines, be like, well, I'm going to wait for it to get to this point. Start playing around with it now. Start understanding how it can be integrated, and start just getting your hands dirty with it. That's the only way to really figure it out. Like I've had to figure out the model. Like why is it producing this? How do I get it to do this? Because the better you get at that, the better you're going to be able to use this in the future.
Well said. Yeah, it's leaning in, getting your hands dirty, and asking questions. I mean, please reach out to our team anytime if you're thinking about kind of investing in this in your business. We're a startup, so we always love to dive in and get our hands dirty, jumping into a sheet, as Tristan knows, to make sure it's up and running. So thanks for tuning in today. This was great. We'll put up lots of this content afterwards and make sure we get a transcript up and everything else. But appreciated the time. Thanks for calling in, Tristan. And we'll do this again, maybe touching on a different sector. But thanks, everyone.
Yeah. See ya.